All right. Hit the yes button. All right, everybody. Welcome to the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate. Thanks for being here. Tonight's discussion is going to be on priorities and delayed gratification. And what you're going to find is that this lesson is going to be almost a reminder of some of the other things that we've gone through. So you can take notes tonight, or you can go back and look at some of the things that we've already talked about. But when we look at our priorities and what it means to have delayed gratification, it wraps right back into our values and goals. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start by reading my famous Andy Frisella blog for the day. Looks okay. Looked like it was cut off there for a second. So here it is. What's stopping you? How many times have you had a shitty experience with a business, product, or service? I'm sure you can think of at least one experience you've had that was negative. I can think of plenty myself. These experiences usually leave us thinking, I could do better than them. But most people stop there and continue to move on with their life without spending another second on that thought. These people fail to recognize the opportunity sitting directly in front of them. If you truly believe you can do better, why don't you? Right? Why don't you? I understand that very few businesses are a result of brand new ideas or inventions. They are the result of someone making improvements to a product or service that already exists. McDonald's didn't make the world's first hamburger. Apple didn't make the world's first phone. Starbucks didn't make the world's first cup of coffee. These people just saw an opportunity to do it better and ran with it. What's stopping you from doing the same thing? Right. And I think it asks a really good question because, I've heard it, I've said it, I've been around people that say it, I could do better than that. And it's only a few that actually act on that. And what's interesting is people that develop successful businesses are people that identify a problem and solve that problem. And that's what some of these companies have done, right? McDonald's solved the problem of replicating something on a regular basis so that people had the same experience every time they went there with this hamburger that they had invented, ripped off from somebody else, more than likely, right? And they did it in a way that people could drive in and drive out of there, right? It was nothing revolutionary at the time. Now, I will say the way that they built their business around kind of a systematic approach, like what Ford used, the conveyor systems, that made sense. But there is opportunity all around us. And it's interesting as I say that, there's a number of things rolling in the back of my mind right now, problems that need to be solved, things that need to be done in my own neighborhood. And in my mind, there's not enough hours in the day to do them all because I already have some successful business ventures going right now, But if I didn't, I would certainly be chasing after solving the problems in my own neighborhood and making a successful living at doing that because I know that I wouldn't quit until I was able to achieve it. So keep that in mind. You want to be an entrepreneur, you want to be successful, just do it better than the guy next to you or the one that you're visiting when you say, hey, I can do it better than them. Well, why don't you? Right? I love that line. So thanks for tuning in. Last week, we had a great call with Rod, brought some really good points that back into what we're talking about, work ethics, appreciate sweat and callous, right? And I love Rod's teaching last week. So today what we're going to do is priorities. How do we establish our priorities? Well, in my mind, there's two things that we've already talked about. And if you're newer to this group, you can go back and watch the earlier video. There's two things to establish your priorities. First, your values. What are your values? And this is a reminder to go back and check what your values are. When we had that lesson in discussion, what values did you write down? And if you remember when we talked about goals, is taking those values and incorporating those values into your goals. Those two items alone right there should establish what your priorities are, right? And those priorities fall in line with where you're at in your life and where you should be at within your career or your entrepreneur endeavors, right? If you're serious about it, if you're truly serious, if it's important, right? Then you'll go back to those things and you'll realize where your priorities are and you'll act on them. right? This is actually a lesson, and I didn't realize it until I was just thinking about it just now. This is a lesson that I taught in school today, the high schoolers. And the lesson was, let's get off our butts. And that was B-U-T apostrophe S. And I think we've talked about that here before. But how come people don't establish and take a more important approach to their priorities, right? And it could be just the excuses that you put in your own mind, right, to not focus on those priorities, right? And so what those typical excuses can be is maybe you're fearful of what that means, right? You're fearful of this business plan that you've built, right? And now it's time to jump off the diving board and go for it, right? Maybe you've established your values and your goals, and now it's time to look at your priorities. And that means I've got to start my business. It's time to launch. It's time to push the button, but you're afraid, right? Well, guess what? It's okay to fail. And it's also okay to succeed, but you'll never know one or the other unless you give it a shot, right? So when I consider what our priorities are, I always use my reference point as my values, right? And those values incorporate into my daily to-do list. You know, what's most important on my list? What do I need to be doing to achieve those goals, right? So really everything flows from that foundational spirit that we've talked about in this organization, right? Building that foundation out. So priorities, they can be affected by your excuses, right? I don't want to fail. You don't know what to expect. You're going to jump off the diving board. You don't know what to expect, right? It's another excuse. It's another but, right? And I want you to get off of those and focus on what your priorities are. We can talk about the meaning of the word, but I think we all know what priorities mean and what they mean to us in our own lives. But we're allowing ourselves to take up excuses to not focus on them. So I'm asking you tonight is to go back to your home base and really look and evaluate what your priorities are. More reasons, more excuses why you wouldn't do them, right? You feel like you don't have enough resources. Well, that's bullshit. We all have one of these, right? This handheld device, supercomputer. These are all the resources you need in the world right here. It's funny, my kids, they got this free Razor scooter about a year and a half ago, and it's battery operated. The neighbor gave it to us, and he says, well, I'm too lazy and too cheap to buy new batteries for it, right? So my wife immediately, excuse me, she decided she's going to take the batteries out and she's going to rectify this a year and a half ago. Well, guess what? She didn't. Batteries sat around. They bounced around in the back of her car for about 6 months. The Razor itself apart in several pieces all over my garage. There's some stuff in the shed, some stuff in my garage. You know, it's like, is this thing ever going to happen? Right? So last week she was out of town. I thought, you know what? I'm going to fix that Razor. I'm going to make this happen, right? So I go buy the batteries, spent the money on that, came home, and I'm looking at all the pieces and 2 screws out of what probably was a dozen. I thought, well, what am I going to do? How do I fix this? How do I fix this? Well, guess what? I went to my resource, my supercomputer. In 2 seconds flat, there was the exact guy on there explaining to me how I put the damn thing back together, right? This Razor is probably 10 years old. But I watched the YouTube video. I slammed it all back together. I used some zip ties that were replacement for all those missing screws. And my daughter's been playing on it ever since. So the last 5 days, she's been enjoying that because I use this resource. So don't tell me you can't conduct your business, create your endeavors, and your priorities can't take priority, right? Utilize the tools and resources you have in front of you, right? All right, you're not motivated. That's a good excuse for not focusing on your priorities. Well, maybe you've got the wrong goals and the wrong values if you're not motivated. You know, so find what your motivation is. Maybe rewrite those values, rewrite those goals. But you should be motivated to focus on what's important to you, right? And that's, again, why we call them priorities. Let's not compare ourselves to others, right? We're our own people. We identify as that, and we should focus on that. You know, so don't worry about what other people are saying or doing. Worry about your world and what's important to you and your family, right? And what you're doing. And then finally, some people, they don't focus on their priorities because they're worried about protecting their identity. And, you know, again, you know, I found that in the last 4 years, especially in the society we live in, I've gained more value in just being who I am and being forthright with that. And the customers that have come to me for everything that I am and not what I'm pretending to be. Right. So don't worry about protecting your identity. Just be who you are and realize that that's going to get you further. Right. I bring up these excuses because I feel like the only thing that's going to limit you from focusing on your priorities are excuses. And those excuses can be pushed aside if you really focus on them and you don't allow them to infiltrate your life, right? And that's why I say, let's get off our butts, literally. You know, to jump in a little bit to delayed gratification, and clearly, I think I've had too many coffees today, maybe. I'm on a roll. I taught high school today. Clearly, we're going to have some time for some Q&A here, so maybe start thinking about that. You know, delayed gratification is a really important topic, especially as it relates to being an entrepreneur and what's important to that business. Because being an entrepreneur, it's all about resources. What are your resources to play the long game in your business? And oftentimes, the easy one that comes to mind is money, right? What's your long game on your resources? So, you know, you start a business, you start making money. Instantly, it's like, wow, I've got a couple grand in the bank. You know, I want to start taking a paycheck here. Well, in my mind, that is probably the wrong move. Okay. You want that gratification to bring the money back in all of a sudden, but are you looking at where that money could be better spent? Would it go further reinvesting in your business, delaying that gratification of the financial side of your business success? And oftentimes people get caught in that trap. Also, the delayed gratification of taking time off. Well, I've worked hard for a year, grew this business. It feels like it's at where it should be, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's not time to take that 3-week vacation. You know, I was working with a client recently that had some success and a good last 6 months. And she thought, well, I'm going to take the month of December off. I said, wait a minute. The month of December, I said, first of all, when I look at your goals, you want a beach house, you know, $2-3 million beach house. I know you're nowhere near that. No offense, but you know, do you really think that taking an entire month off is going to help you achieve your goals? Well, maybe, maybe not. I said, look, if you're serious about your goals, then you'll delay that gratification of taking a month off, right? I'm not saying don't take any time off, but when you're serious about your goals, you should be serious about how you spend your time trying to achieve those goals as well. The foundational elements of your business, right? It all includes delaying that gratification, whatever that looks like to you. Maintaining those resources, whether it's for the rainy day, for the ups and downs of business, but setting those things aside so that you always have the tools, okay? Speaking of tools and money, you know, one of the most powerful tools that you can have in business is good credit, right? And oftentimes we'll grab a credit card to build up our business coffers. And that's another area where we can get some instant gratification, right? I'm going to have this good business lunch, or I'm going to use the card to buy this nice little whatever that might be. Well, again, trying to delay the gratification there and improving and increasing your credit, because you never know when you might need that credit, especially if you see a quick change in your business model where all of a sudden you're chasing the success and you need the resources for that. That credit card could be your saving grace, or your credit itself could be the saving grace to increase your business for the long run, right? In my mind, the focus should be build, 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 delay, 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 until you get to a point where you've delayed enough, you put enough aside, and you're on track, moving in the direction that you feel comfortable moving, and you have everything you need for that growth. That's when you can start taking advantage of the resources and enjoying some of your fruits of your labor, right? It's playing the long game. It's playing chess. It's being smart. And I don't think enough people do that. You know, when you look on the internet, people's Instagram, you know, they find a little success and they're buying the fancy cars. They're taking a private jet somewhere, you know, and all those things are flashy and fun. But what do their finances look like? What happens if the market takes a turn? Do they have the resources to continue the business? Because you have to stay in business to be in business. And people oftentimes forget that, right? You got to stay in business to be in business. So, you know, again, pulling money pulls the resources for the long term. So in a nutshell, those are my 2 big points. I shot them off to you really quick. 15 minutes quick at that. I'd love to get Rod's input on a couple things and answer some questions. And I'll dig into a couple more things before we really start to wrap this up. And I know this is about that time where time starts flying by, and next thing you know, it's going to be an hour. So I'll throw it over to Rod for a second if you had some questions or comments.
Thanks, Jim. I do. In fact, I had several, and I thought I better not, because some of these I've actually put notes down because they're going to be a whole class. It's like there's so much fuel here to start different fires that it's really kind of incredible. But I recently had, my wife and I went out to a lunch, a homemade Jamaican lunch from someone from Jamaica on Saturday, and she had gone through a very terrible divorce several years ago, and we were at her house, which she had no money, no credit. She was one of those literally kept women. I mean, her ex-husband controlled absolutely everything. She got out of a very bad relationship, and she found a way to get into a house. She refused to get into some of the crappy apartments, and she knew she could afford better. And she was just diligent and like a bulldog, and we were in her house. It's a 3-bedroom. It's just her daughter's off in college, 3-bedroom house. And she was a professional bodybuilder, sculpting, the contest, the whole works. She's got a home gym in her garage and downstairs. I mean, completely equipped. Every room in her house was completely furnished and with nice stuff. And she had done this on her own, starting from scratch in 3 years' time. And it was a nice home in a very nice neighborhood. And by the way, the valuation of that place has gone up about $250,000 since she bought that house. You know what the market's like around here, Jim. So, this is one of those things that there are no excuses. There really are no excuses. In fact, sometimes being hungry is the best thing that can happen. It's like, what's that hunger for? Is it for, it may be for material things. It may just be for a change, a lifestyle change. But if you're hungry, you're going to find a way to make it work. And sometimes it's that competitiveness. Sometimes it's accountability. I needed accountability to make me hungry, because accountability gets me focused, and it also brings on a competition, right? And Jim, you've seen that. In fact, just today, Jim and I had an issue I needed to tackle on a project I'm working on for us, one of our businesses. And I said, I can't figure this one part of this thing out. I said, I know there's a solution. I just don't know exactly how to do it. Jim said, well, I know how to do it. I can teach you how to do it. And I said, no, I will YouTube it. I will figure it out on my own. So part of it is I could wait until Thursday when Jim and I meet, and I could have him teach me how to do it. But it's the pride factor. It's like, no, I'm going to teach myself how to do this. I'm a grown ass man. I'm going to teach myself how to do this. I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to get it done. So whatever it is that motivates you, you need to figure out what that is and tap into that, because that's going to tie into your priorities. And then the delayed gratification thing, it's not instantaneous. This gal I told you about, she didn't get that house overnight. She worked and worked and worked and worked, and we got to see the end result. But that was delayed gratification as well. And I'm going to tell a quick story on my son, because I'm very proud of him. My youngest son, he started his family young. He got that from me. So he started his family young, and he had a 1-year-old son in 2008, and the economy tanked. I think you all remember that, the Great Recession, right? There wasn't a job around here, and he had done well. He had his own window cleaning business, and he was working for a big international corporation here. Everything went out. He had nothing, and he had an opportunity to go to work, not in the oil fields, but in oil field related businesses. And he just was on the phone. He dogged people. He dogged them and dogged them and dogged them. And finally, a guy said, "Look, if you're in my office the day after Thanksgiving, I will give you a job." And he wasn't at our house for Thanksgiving, because on Thanksgiving he was traveling out of state to go meet with this guy and he got a job. And that job ended up being for, at that time, a 19-year-old kid. He was making $250,000 a year 2 years later. And he had a bunch of other friends that were over in the oil fields, and they were making that kind of money too, but they were buying big trucks and they were buying every accessory for them, and they were buying all these toys and spending money like it was going out of style. And my son and his wife banked that money. And in 8 years, he came back and he didn't have to work anymore. And he had 5 acres and a house and a 4-car garage, and it was all paid for. And this is from a young kid. That's delayed gratification. That's working your butt off. That's setting your priorities, having your values straight. And he sacrificed. I mean, it was tough on him, the kids, and the family, but he had a goal. I'm going to be done in 8 years. In 8 years, I will be able to come home and be there full time. And you can do hard things. I think I talked about that before, but you can't do hard things without having your values set and your goals in front of you. If you don't have those two things there, hard things will derail you. And Jim, I think you know that, but and that's why, again, business plans are so important, and taking a look at them and revising them and making sure they line up with your values and your goals today, because those can change. You know, your values won't change, but your goals may change. So we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. I know it's important, you know, to stay up on that. And Jim, I kind of took more time there because you got me fired up. I can tell I've needed a little bit of this myself this week. We ended off on a high last week on Friday, and it's just carrying through. So things are going really well there. Anyhow, that's my input there. And you're right on the money. You're absolutely right on the money to be reminding us of getting the excuses and the butts out of the way.
Yeah, well, time worked out right because I was trying to get rid of a dry cough. But, you know, when I was looking at the title for tonight's discussion, you know, to me, it was a no-brainer. We're going to talk about priorities. Well, I already know what my priorities are. Why do I know what they are? Because I know what my goals are, right? My goals are dictating where my priorities are. So it was almost a non-issue in my mind, but it made me realize maybe we need to talk about goals and values again and remind people that if you've got these established, you'll know what your priorities should be, right? Real quick on delayed gratification. I should say that oftentimes in business, different than what Rod has discussed about his discipline of his son to save the money and delay that personal gratification, oftentimes gratification is delayed because it's forced, right? You might have to wait longer for that success of the business. And what I'll tell you about that is that if you have the ability to have longevity and patience in your business, you will come out ahead because people will quit around you. Let them quit. You be the one that doesn't quit, and you delay, you know, what your needs are to have the success of that business being long-term, right? So oftentimes we're either forced in that position, but also we can take a position of delaying so that we can outwit the competition, because people notoriously quit. You can almost count on people quitting 9 out of 10 times. And if you're that person that's ruthless about what you're doing and where you're doing it, you will come out ahead every time. And you'll watch the people fall, the chips fall alongside of you. By the way, utilizing Rod's story there, it would be interesting to talk about the friends of his son that made all that money and went out and bought, you know, the lifted trucks and all those other things. And I get it. I did that, right? I wasn't as serious about my goals. I wonder how many of them wrote down their goals. Probably none. But if they did, I wonder how many of them would have said, well, I've got a goal to lift my truck up, you know, 4 inches and put 38-inch tires on here. Probably none of them. They probably all wrote down, if they had goals, want to buy a house, want to get married, want to save $1 million, whatever it is. All of them more than likely either didn't have goals or they forgot what their real goals were, right? And that's what's interesting. Your son stayed on target and knew exactly what he was going to do. He probably referred to those goals often, right? So as a quick reminder, and it's easy for me because I just taught this class last week with my high schoolers. What are goals? What does that mean? Okay, how do you establish what your goals are? And you start looking at the importance of them. Okay. And I know we've talked about this before, but we have new members and this lives in perpetuity as a video. A goal is putting your thought into action, right? You take your goal and then it's putting that thought into action. One thing as a reminder with your goals, especially if you realize tonight, well, I don't know what my priorities are. I better relook at my goals, right? Your goals should be clear and specific. Clear and specific. Okay. I know I have a goal that I want to achieve by June 13th, 2023. It's a dollar amount. Okay. I looked at a situation and said, you know what? This is what I want to have by 2023, June 13th. And the purpose behind it is I want to give more. And I put a number in my mind that I've been focusing on since June 13th of this year based on my ambition to give more. I'm going to get it because I know exactly what that number is and I go toward it. I'm very clear and very specific with what that is. And I encourage you to establish your goals and be very clear and very specific. And when I say specific, put down a date like I've done it, right? Put down a date and know exactly what you plan on achieving by that time. Okay. Your mind will help figure that out. Whether you focus on it every day, your mind will help figure it out. And by the way, my business partner, Rod over there, through some of his efforts, we're probably going to hit that goal sooner than June. So obviously write your goals down, but review them often. Okay. Review them often. The students in our class, Rod and I just gave them all a notebook. We noticed they were coming to class without any paper or pens or anything to write on. I think we live in a society of cell phones and computers. We gave them all something to write on. I said, use this to write down your goals, review it often. And here's a fun thought, and this actually applies for everybody in here. Wouldn't it be fun in 10 years from now to look back at your notes from today and go, wow, look what my goals were then. It's almost funny, right? I told the kids, they said, wouldn't it be great to look back in 10 years and realize that you started a business while you were still in high school, right? Write your goals down, review them often. Don't limit yourself with your goals. Don't limit yourself. Throw it out there. Don't allow your limiting thoughts to limit your goals. Okay. And like I've said before, and Rod said, we know everybody on this call. We know what your businesses are. We know what your ambitions are. We don't know what you've written down for your goals, but we have a pretty good idea. Don't limit yourself. Dave Meltzer had told me one time, I was talking about raising money for the orphanages in Mexico. I said, Dave, I want to raise $100,000 this year for those orphanages. And Dave looks at me and goes, why would you want to do that? I thought, God, why would he ask me a silly question? He goes, why would you put a number on it? Why not just be the largest donor to the orphanages in Mexico and not put a number on it at all? Maybe that's $1 million. He says, you have limiting beliefs. Take those limiting beliefs away. Donate the most that you possibly can, right? So don't limit yourself in your goals. You will find a way to do it. All right. I've said this a lot. What you believe is what you'll achieve. Works every time. I look back on my goals. I had some that I wasn't referring back to very often. They were a separate set of goals living on my computer on a spreadsheet. And I went back to them. I randomly found them when I was cleaning out some files, like, oh, my old goal sheet. I was able to go down the list. 9 out of 10 of them I'd achieved without even thinking about it and literally checking them off the list. They were still sitting there. I thought, wow, doesn't that feel good to go back? And because I was specific and I'd written them down, they were in my mind, right? I didn't review them often as I'm suggesting you do. But how great was it to go back and look at that? And I didn't limit myself on that either. Be passionate about your goals. What you give in return will also help achieve those goals. Don't be afraid to give because it's going to come back to you, right? Include a date for each goal and make a plan to achieve that goal, both short and long term. All right. Again, I'm reminding people on the call of making your goals as part of your system so you know what your priorities are. Okay. If you don't have a system, those goals aren't involved, you will not know what your priorities are. Okay. And we've talked to a lot of people about just getting started. You know, it's like my wife for the 75 hard program is telling her I want her to do it. She says, start tomorrow. What are you waiting for? And she was right. So I'm 13 days in. Sorry for those of you, Palin, that wants to do it. You'd be 13 days in right now. Sorry to call you out. But, you know, there's no time like the present to start something if you're thinking about it and it's important enough to you. If it's important enough, the time should be urgent. Get after it. right? Okay, with that I'm going to open up for any questions. Any more comments from Rod? Jim, I get to see your face, so would love to have any comments from you, Palin. Wayne, thanks for being on the call tonight. I told a story about us racing together on the last call I was hosting on. So thank you for being a big part of that adventure and being driven to get to the finish line. So just some public accolades for him. So Rod, any thoughts?
I do have thought, and it's one of those things you've given me an idea for a topic I'm going to go into more detail, but I'm going to skim on the surface of it real quick here tonight. And that is, when you're setting your goals, think big. Think big. And if your goal is to make $1 million, write down 4 million. Probably inflation, you'll need that anyway. It doesn't matter. Think big. And you were saying how, your wife told you, well, you want to do 75 hard start tomorrow. When I finished my book, I told my wife, I said, you know what? I want the president of the United States to have my book. Maybe I'll get something out of that. Right. And she said, well, what's stopping you? So here, I gotta pull my binder out because this is my binder of success, right? These are all those awards that most people hang on their wall, honorable discharges and all that stuff. But I have here a letter dated October 29th, 2019. It says, thank you for taking the time to write to me and send me your book. Your kind words and steadfast support mean a great deal. Sincerely, whether you like him or not, Donald Trump, on White House stationery, right?
Nice.
Think big. I'm just some guy out here in Montana, right? Wrote a book. Think big. You never know. But you're not going to, if you think small, you're going to get small. Think big. So that's just touching on that. And I'll let it go at that.
Hey, in the last week, Rod and I, we meet every Thursday and we talk about the Syndicate. This is a business for us. It's a mission for us. It's a give back. It's really kind of our life mission. Everything that we've done has culminated into what we're doing here, and we want to constantly bring value. But one thing that resonated from our conversation last Thursday was we want participants, not members, in the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate. Is we want participants. And I just read a note from somebody. Actually, it was from Will. He's not on the call tonight. Will and I did some work together, and he wrote me a nice handwritten note. And he said, Jim, I hope to be one of those people that you're proud of in the Syndicate for the work that I'm doing, right? And to me, that's somebody that wants to be a participant. He's written it down, he's doing something. And I'm not saying anybody here is not a participant, but to me, that's a home run. When we're all participants in what we're doing here, and that we're making real changes in our lives, in our journeys, and the reason why we're on these calls is that we're leveraging all these assets, one another, Rod and I, our experiences and the tools that we're giving you to take action. To me, being a participant means taking action on what you're learning. I really enjoyed being a member of the Lion's Den with Sean Whalen. It reminds me of my old school pastor when I was in high school. Friday nights was all about drinking and getting rowdy and crazy. And then I go to church on Sunday, and, he had the condemning fist of the Lord. And, I was like, oh my God, I better get my act together. And I was good from Monday through Thursday. And then Friday I was back at it again, and back on Sunday, repenting. I don't want this to be that. I want this to be a place where you listen tonight and you can't sleep tonight when you get off the phone because you're like, you know what? Something resonated with what they were saying, what I'm learning. I need to start on my business plan. I need to start 75 hard tomorrow. I need to, make a change in work, or I need to make a change in life, or tomorrow morning, I'm going to get up and I'm going to get after this memo that I've been meaning to write to my boss to help make a change, or whatever that looks like to you. I want this to be a change agent for your life and for what you want to be doing. I don't want this to be the Sunday sermon where I'm hounding you and battering you with the word of the Lord or the word of entrepreneurship. I want this to be something that that launches you into action, whether that's tonight, whether that's in 15 minutes from now or in the morning. But I'd like to see each week our participants and the changes that they're going through, and we can all celebrate in those successes. So, you know, I'm not going to leave it at that. If we've got questions, if we don't have questions, I am going to leave it at that, because I don't think there's anything more that can be said than that. Focus on your goals, which will give you your priorities. Don't be afraid to delay your gratification, and please be a participant here, and somebody that is focused on change and making a difference in your own lives, and allow us here in this group to celebrate in that, right? So I hope next week we have something to celebrate because somebody's made a significant change in the last 7 days, right? So any questions? If not, Rod, tell us what you're talking about next week. Jim's got a question. Thank you.
Go to Jim.
Okay. So I mentioned this a week ago, Jim, and I shared a little bit through text messages. This opportunity that's come up through the other group. This person has basically, they had a software as a service platform set up where they do cybersecurity training through their platform. So they're targeting kind of like mid-level service providers, security providers, insurance companies that are looking to feed this out. My opportunity to come in is to basically introduce warm leads. And I think I'd mentioned before that, you know, I've never thought about sales, but there's something about this that's, I feel like it's calling me. And I think this whole goal setting tonight is my opportunity to really kind of look at this and say, you know, what are those goals? I mean, how many subscribers, how many clients, and really nail down some monthly dates and you know, number of contacts, number of outreach. There's a lot of opportunity to really detail a lot of it.
Yeah.
Put those numbers down.
But put those numbers down, and look, being in sales, right? The importance of sales is you're going to earn a commission, especially as you've just described it, which means it's your own business. You're going to get out of it what you put into it, right? And I would encourage you to write a brief 1-page, 2-page business plan around how you want to achieve your objectives in this sales position, right? And let that live on the side of your daily job. I'm guessing you're not going to leave your company, your 9-to-5, pay the bills, right? But you're entertaining this other offer and you want to create an opportunity out of that. Well, treat it like that. Treat it as something that one day might replace the other, okay? Build a short business plan for yourself because you're going to commit time to this. What does that look like to me? What is my mission and value in this, right? When I reach out to these customers, how am I going to approach them? What am I hoping to achieve? What's my budget? And in your case, it might be not be a budget of money. It might be a budget of your time as it surrounds your family and your 9-to-5, right? What does that look like? What does this look like in 6 months, in a year? What does this look like in 3 years, right? And I'm not saying you have to over deliberate on this 1 or 2-page business plan, but build yourself a map where you want to go with this. Once you get that done, dive into the sales organization, dive into what that looks like. And I guarantee you, Rod and I, probably more so Rod, he's had a lot of success in sales over the years. I'm sure we can help you with systems and balances and how to achieve some success there. But just like anything else, it's not going to come easy. Okay. But the rewards at sales provides incredible opportunities in life, but you have to treat it as such. You have to give it that level of importance and understand that there will be value there if you do your job. And it goes back to understanding what you're selling, the reason why, what's the value proposition to the buyer from your company. And hopefully you're diving into what this company offers and you feel good and passionate about it and that you can bring something to the table. But then jump in with both feet, set your goals, start small, right? Maybe it's, hey, I want 1 customer a week. Okay, 1 customer. There's 52 weeks in a year. That's 52 new customers. As a business owner, I'd take 52 new customers, right? If you guarantee me that, I'd hire you. But you can jump into 2 customers, then 3 customers, and build into what your goals look like. Start small and build up from there. But you're right. I'm glad you identified, here's a great opportunity for you to reestablish your goals and map them out. I think you should have overarching goals for you and your family, And then I think you should have individual goals for what you want to achieve in this new sales position. So Rod, you got any thoughts?
Well, I think you're right on the money. And I personally love sales and I'm an introvert, right? And it's putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. And, that's the secret to my success has been, being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and that is part of the risk, that sales is great. Just don't, it's easy to make excuses unless you budget that time. I guess I'm gonna throw a caution out there. If you're not budgeting time, you're not gonna be successful. You have to budget that time, and it has to be, okay, I'm making X amount of sales calls during that time. You have to. And if you've got a 9 to 5 that's paying the bills, it's really easy to let that slide. So the business plan, I think, is essential. You need to be committed to it, whatever it is, whatever you're comfortable with. You need to figure that out. But budgeting that time is absolutely critical. And you might have to do some extra reading, watch some online courses to get your sales skills up. You can learn anything, including sales. I don't care who you are. Everyone's a salesman. Everyone is a salesman already, but you can refine those skills. And I could recommend great books. Get online. Grant Cardone, probably one of the top salespeople in the world. And if it fits, great. And if it doesn't fit, leave it on the shelf. But set realistic time goals and stick to them.
Hey, selfless plug here, Jim. The Answer is Yes podcast, episode 198. I interviewed Jeremy Miner, who's actually one of the top salespeople in the country currently, worked with your Grant Cardones of the world. And it's a pretty good interview. It's 25, 30 minutes, easy listening. There might be a nugget in there. It was a good conversation between he and I. Talks about a story, but he does also throw a couple tips there. Obviously, he's trying to pitch his coaching, but I think there's enough of a nugget for you to grasp a hold of something. And, like Rod said, there's tons of great materials on sales, but at the end of the day, it comes down to hard work, right? It just comes down to hard work. It's a numbers game. And that's what I love about it. It's a numbers game. That old adage, knock on 10 doors and you get one, every no's that much closer to yes. All that shit's real, but you're not going to get it from the comfort of your home without trying hard. And just know that going into that. But you'll have a great support group here for that. I know Wayne's listening. He's working on some real estate sales and some rental properties and stuff like that. Wayne, all this applies to you and any of our other members that are out there in the process of whether you're selling your own goods and services or a service more less than good. So this applies across the board. So Jim, thanks for the question. What I love about the question, by the way, is that you asked it and there's value to everybody in the answer. Right. And that to me, that's the other half of the golden nugget here on these calls is somebody asks good questions. It gives us an opportunity to open up dialogue and discuss it where somebody else might pick up something.
Jim, real quick, you said it was episode 198?
198 on The Answer is Yes. I had to look it up.
And who was the gentleman?
Jeremy Miner, Miner, on my podcast, The Answer is Yes.
Got it.
Got it?
Thank you.
Okay, cool. No worries. All right, Rod.
And Jim, real quick, congratulations. I mean, just for entertaining a new thing, for thinking I'm gonna dive into something different. Congratulations. I mean, that's gutsy, and you need to be commended for that. I mean, you're stretching, and anytime there's stretching, that's good. And Jim, you'd asked me, Jim Riley, you'd asked me about next week what I'm talking about. I am not. You are.
Yeah, that's right.
You're taking that show over for me. So if you make another note, and you get to have Mr. Riley twice in a row, and I'll make it up on the other end. I'll probably be on that call, but I'm not going to commit at this point. I've got grandson football game.
I love it. Well, the core area is inspire. The title is honest, lie, cheat, and steal. And I know what that stands for. So I'm looking forward to that. Look, there's a lot of resources on the back end of our website. Rod and I meet on Thursdays because we want to continually evaluate the values that we're bringing to this group. We've got some things in the hopper that I'm excited about. And I'll make an announcement probably next week on a new project that Rod and I are working on that will bring a little bit more of the group as well. So thank you for that. Jim, thank you for your question. Wayne, Palin, good to see you guys on the call. And we're here for you. So thank you for tuning in tonight. Appreciate it. Jim, be well. Like Rod said, congratulations.
Thank you. I hope to
Right
have
on.
updates.
I look
soon.
forward to it. I look
Yep.
forward to it. All right, everybody have a great night. Bye-bye.
Thanks, all.
Good night.